They say history is written by the victors. But what happens when both sides lose so catastrophically that the world collectively chooses to forget? In the mid-19th century, long before the First and Second World Wars painted the 20th century in blood, before machine guns, before mustard gas, before atomic fire, there was a war that tore through an empire with such unimaginable fury that it left 25 million people dead. A war of religion, a war of desperation, a war that turned neighbor against neighbor, child against parent, brother against brother. And almost no one outside of Asia speaks of it today. This isn't fiction. This isn't a parable. This is the true story of the Taiping Rebellion, a war so apocalyptic, it made the American Civil War look like a skirmish, and came this close to toppling one of the oldest empires on earth. And it all began with a man who believed he was the brother of Jesus Christ. In 1837, a failed scholar named Hong Xiuquan was lying in a feverish delirium. He had just failed the Imperial Civil Service exam for the third time. In Qing Dynasty China, this exam wasn't just a test. It was the only way to rise in society. Fail and you were nobody. Pass and you could shape the empire. Hong had studied for years, but once again rejection. But this time something broke. As his mind slipped into madness, he claimed to have seen a vision. In it, he stood before a radiant throne. A man in golden robes told him that demons had taken over the world, and that he, Hong Xiuquan, had been chosen to purge them. Beside the golden man stood another figure, a brother, a teacher, a warrior. His name? Jesus Christ. When Hong awoke, he was no longer a failed scholar. He was a Messiah, and he would stop at nothing to remake the world in his image. Hong Xiuquan founded the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, claiming he had been sent by God to destroy the Qing rulers, whom he called demons disguised as men. His doctrine was bizarre and terrifying. He banned opium, gambling, alcohol, tobacco, even sexual relations outside strict marriage. He declared the Confucian texts demonic. He ordered mass book burnings. He demanded total devotion to the new heavenly kingdom, with him as its divine king. But what made his cult explode was timing. China was reeling. The First Opium War had just ended, leaving the Qing humiliated by the British. Floods and famines were killing thousands. Corruption was everywhere. The poor were desperate, and Hong Xiuquan promised them salvation. By the early 1850s, Hong had gathered hundreds of thousands of followers, peasants, ex-soldiers, outlaws, all united under a strange banner: Christianity, fused with Chinese mysticism, weaponized into a holy war. And then, he unleashed hell. The Taiping army stormed through southern China like a biblical plague. Entire cities were overtaken. Qing officials were executed en masse. Temples were torched. Buddhist monks were forced to convert or die. By 1853, Hong's forces had captured Nanjing, a city of over 1 million, and declared it the capital of his new empire. He renamed it Tianjin, the heavenly capital. There, he ruled not as a man, but as the heavenly king, receiving messages from God, pronouncing laws with divine authority, and eliminating anyone who questioned him. He created a strange, strict society. Men and women were separated. Haircuts were standardized. Military life became mandatory. And even though he claimed to follow Christ's teachings, he allowed no one but himself to communicate with God. It was a theocracy built not on peace but fire. And across China, the slaughter began. The Qing dynasty, for all its might, was caught off guard. Their armies were scattered, and their generals corrupt. As the Taiping swept north, city after city fell. Sometimes they were welcomed as liberators. Other times they massacred entire populations to send a message. The deeper they went, the bloodier it became. Children were conscripted. Women took up arms. Families betrayed each other. Meanwhile, Hong Xiuquan retreated into his heavenly palace in Nanjing, becoming increasingly paranoid, issuing edicts from behind golden curtains while his generals battled over power. One of them, Yang Xiuqing, declared that the Holy Spirit spoke through him and began to act as if he, not Hong, was the real leader. The result was predictable. In a palace coup worthy of Shakespeare, Yang was lured to a meeting and hacked to death, along with thousands of his followers. This wasn't a rebellion anymore. It was a civil war within a civil war. And it was only getting worse. The Qing, desperate to survive, turned to unexpected allies, Western powers. At first, the British and French had been curious about the Taiping. They saw a movement that preached Christianity, banned opium, and attacked the corrupt Qing. But the chaos, the fanaticism, the slaughter, it scared even them. When Hong's armies began approaching Shanghai, a crucial trade hub, the West stepped in. Foreign mercenaries, led by men like Frederick Townsend Ward and later Charles Chinese Gordon, trained and led elite Qing forces known as the ever-victorious army. With Western weapons, discipline, and tactics, the tide began to turn. One by one, Taiping cities were recaptured. One by one, Hong's generals fell. And all the while, inside his palace, the heavenly king stopped eating. He claimed demons had poisoned his food. His body weakened. His visions intensified. In 1864, as Qing troops surrounded Nanjing, Hong Xiuquan died, possibly of starvation. Days later, Qing soldiers breached the city. The Taiping defenders fought to the last man, then set fire to the capital. What followed was a massacre. Tens of thousands were executed in the streets. The Taiping princes were hunted down, one by one. By the end, Hong's so-called heavenly kingdom lay in ashes. When the smoke cleared, the numbers were unfathomable. 25 million people dead. Entire regions depopulated. Farmland turned to wilderness. Cities abandoned or reduced to charred rubble. It was the deadliest civil war in human history, and it remains the second deadliest conflict ever, surpassed only by World War II. Yet today, barely anyone outside of China knows its name. Why? Because it was inconvenient. The Qing didn't want to glorify a rebellion. The West didn't understand it. And in modern narratives of war, religion, and ideology, the story doesn't fit neatly into good versus evil. It was a war where a messiah declared himself divine, where fanatics and imperialists slaughtered each other, where salvation came dressed as conquest. And the price? An entire generation lost. History doesn't just forget on its own. It is buried, erased, shrouded in silence. But the ghosts remain, in the empty villages, in the censored textbooks, in the echoes of prayers whispered by the desperate, who believed they were fighting for heaven, but found only hell. The Taiping Rebellion didn't just kill 25 million people. It killed the illusion that belief, no matter how pure, can save us from the darker corners of ourselves. And maybe that's why we chose to forget it, because remembering it would mean accepting that faith, too, can become a weapon. Would you have followed the heavenly king? Or would you have died defying him? The line between prophet and madman is thin, and history has always been written by the last man standing.